Hi, Mr. Howe.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yep, sure.
So just a couple of things. For you, obviously your dad and family were so into hockey. How did you kind of get into hockey from a young age, and what were some of the things for you that kind of really kind of made you that want to pursue a professional hockey career?
Well, I don't know. I think we all played hockey for a living. I think we all loved it. But we were kind of into everything else. But hockey was an absolute huge part of our lives growing up. So I know my dad. Um, I was always told they put me on skates when I was 2 years old, and they used to put me on a chair, and you'd put when I was 4 years old, playing organized hockey. We played. They had no indoor rinks at the time, so we played outdoors for a couple of years, and then yeah, I always. Yeah, I think I was a pretty good athlete at a lot of things, but my brother Marty actually was a better athlete than I was. But
Mhm.
but I think I had more of a passion for playing hockey, and
Yeah.
so I mean, from a very young age, it was always something I wanted to do. Back in the day, I was a pretty good golfer. I wrestled, ran track, played baseball, football, did so many things
Yeah.
in junior high and high school. But I always held back too. It was easily my first choice was to play hockey.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, especially when you have, it's crazy because I think a lot of the talk nowadays is, a lot of kids getting into other sports that kind of helps them get into the game. So it's interesting, playing so many different sports and kind of how that helped you as well. Um, just kind of going off that, you played in the WHA as well for a long time, 426 career games. What was that kind of transition period like from, going from the WHA to the NHL?
Well, that transition was easy. I think it was more difficult going from amateur hockey. So my last year of amateur, I played up with the Toronto Marlboros. My brother was on the team the year before, and then he played that year, and we won the Memorial Cup, um, and then the WHA came along, and at the time you had to be 20 years of age to get into the NHL,
Mhm.
and because of the draft rules and stuff. But the WHA took guys earlier, so we went down to Houston. Dad came out of retirement, and we played. And but yeah, when you're 18 years old and you're playing against a lot of men that are 30 years of age, that's a big transition. But I think having my dad on my line, and also having a great coach and Bill Deneen, and a good group of really good group of guys down in Houston, that made the transition a little bit easier.
Mhm.
Actually, I think Marty adapted to the league a little quicker than I did. I think I got rolling, maybe by the end of November, December sometime. And then I started to feel, like I belonged. And so, I mean, the transition when the leagues merged in '79 was actually, it was pretty easy. The only thing, it was just a little bit of an unknown because you're going, everybody said the WHA was a horrible league and guys couldn't play. And
Mhm.
well, and Hartford was, of the teams that got in the league, Hartford was the worst team that got in. And
Right.
we made the playoffs that year, and probably would have made it the next year, but we had some really bad injuries at wrong times, and we definitely weren't, one of the elite teams in the league. But we weren't in the WHA either, and so the only thing that was different for me because I played forward pretty much for 6 years, and a couple of games on defense, not many. But the year the leagues merged was I got moved to defense, so that was the first year that I really played defense. So it was more of a transition of from going playing left wing to
To do.
learning how to be a defenseman. Yeah.
Right. So just kind of going off that then, like just talk about that a little more. Like how was that transition for you from going from 40 goals at wing and then going to right into defense? Like how much did you have to change in your game?
Well, I had to learn how to play the position.
Right.
One is, it's even as a forward, I was always taught that you play both ends of the rink. You learn how to get the puck out. You get your coverage in your end of the rink, and I was always a responsible two-way player,
Hmm.
and then on defense, it's just even more so. I mean, your primary job is keeping the puck out of your net,
Right.
and the more you can, any offense that you can bring, if you're a solid defenseman, is just an absolute bonus. So, but the hard part back 79 was, I think we didn't have a lot of games televised. We really didn't have anybody. There was no efficient way of trying to learn the position other than you go out, you make mistakes, and then in your mind, you kind of go over what you think you did wrong, and then you work on it. And it wasn't until then I went through a real bad injury. I think the second year in the league, and and I think that's what kind of um, forced things so that the team wasn't happy with me. I wasn't happy with the situation I was in,
Right.
and I got traded to Flyers, and I've always credited Eddie Van Imp with helping me out tremendously when I came to the Flyers. So Eddie used to say, like, "What am I going to teach you?" And I know because I was runner up for the Norris my first year, and
Hmm.
and I said, "Nobody's ever taught me a thing about playing the position." And so Eddie taught me, how he played. And my skill set was better than Eddie's, and
Right.
obviously he was bigger and stronger, tougher, but he had to play the game within his limitations, and
Hmm.
he taught me how he mentally thought the game, how he positioned himself, how he looked at things, and I paid really close attention to that. And I had some good partners here that where you learn to do it, you learn to do it in practice every day. And
Right.
when you once you can correct making the mistakes you make, then the defensive part of the game gets much easier, and I think you can bring more offense to the game. So that's kind of or the transition of the next couple of years, that I think that's where I really started to learn how to play the position.
Wow, that's incredible. Just kind of going off that, you mentioned coming to Philly. It was that in the big deal in '83. Um, your first game as a Flyer. I've heard this story before. I'm curious if you could kind of just explain it a little bit. The first pass that you received from Paul Holmgren. What was what was what was that like?
Well, that was the first home game, and it was yeah, it was near. I think it was about somewhere around the 15-minute mark. There was a little bit of time left in the period, not a lot. And
Hmm.
yeah, I passed the puck to the right wing, and I drove up the middle of the rink, and I had like a little semi break going to the net. So Paul Holmgren wanted to pass it back, and back in the day, the ice in the spectrum wasn't always the best, and
Right.
Homer's pass ended up hitting me just in the right cheekbone. So it stunned me. I went down and ran into the boards. I got up, and so I was trying to finish the period, but it was a bad enough cut. They said, "No, go in and get it stitched now." So
Hmm.
so yeah, to this day, I always remind Homer that pass. Actually, when I was getting stitched up in between periods, he came in and he said, "I got to learn how to take a pass." So I guess it was my fault.
That's funny.
Yeah.
How many stitches did you get?
Oh, I don't know.
Don't remember.
Nah, like I don't know. On that play, who knows? But I think the worst. Well, I mean, the worst thing that ever happened to me is I got skewered on the net in Hartford. I mean, that was a pretty
Ooh.
traumatic thing. I mean, I was extremely lucky to still be walking. Really lucky I didn't have to wear a colostomy bag the rest of my life. I mean, I missed doing that by maybe an eighth of an inch. Like I said, I missed being paralyzed by maybe three-quarters of an inch. So there's a lot of things that could have happened and that didn't. But yeah, I mean, it set me back a long time. So I mean, I used to play it on that night because I weighed myself every day, and I weighed 192 pounds. And I think I tried to come back and play 6 weeks later, and I weighed 170.
Oh, wow.
So, and I was no good for at least a year. It took me a year to recover from it, and
Right.
just to get to where I started. But I never ever played over 186 pounds again, so I never fully recovered from that. And
Yeah.
so it was. But I think other than that, I think one time we were playing on the island, and I took Mike Bossy out behind the net, and we both just fell. He fell forward. I fell like on his back, and his skate caught my upper lip, and it cut through, and it cut through the end of my nose, and then it got through and cut my gum a little bit, and that one was. I don't know, it was like 25, 30 stitches, but I mean, obviously it could have been a heck of a lot worse. But then the worst thing about it was, and this was an exhibition game. It was a couple of days later. We had a game up in Quebec,
Mhm.
and I went to just finish a check on, or Boston it was, and I went to finish a check on Kenny Linsman. And Kenny, because I know he played on the edge, and he must have thought somebody was coming to run him from behind, and
Mhm.
I wasn't ready for it. And he two-handed me and it gave me a cross check in the face, and what it did just split that cut wide open. And that's the one that then it really hurt. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was like I said, both times. I had a couple uh, pretty bad injury. Well, like I said, the one in Hartford was like could have been like I said, devastating for my life, let
Right.
alone anything else. But as unfortunate I was to have those things happen, it ended up being I was extremely fortunate.
Wow. Yeah, no, for sure. Just kind of going off that, I'm since I'm live, there's people in here listening and stuff, and one question that actually just came in, which I'm actually curious what your answer is someone had asked to ask you how you felt about playing in the Cooperalls, but with the Flyers with the pants.
I didn't mind them. Like if anybody knew me back in the day, and especially the trainers are always the guys that have to deal with the players. Some are fussy and finicky, and
Hmm.
there's only two things that I really cared about, and that was my skates and my sticks.
Okay.
So yeah, so I mean the Cooperalls, they didn't bother me at all, and
Hmm.
I wore my equipment extremely loose. Underneath, people wear underwear, shirts, this and that. Most of the time, actually, I just wore a jock underneath my equipment. I like to be as light as possible. I didn't like to overheat, and
Yeah.
so it was. But yeah, and I was pretty efficient with my skates too. I think I used to use at most one pair of skates a year. Every once in a while,
Oh,
I'd
wow.
make them last about a year and a half.
Yeah.
And as far as sharpening skates, I generally Kurt Munt was our equipment guy, and I used to just tell Kurt that when they hang my skates up, if he thought I needed them sharpened, go ahead and sharpen them. If not, just leave them alone. So a lot of times I would go every bit of 3 weeks without having my skates sharpened. The only thing that was different up in when we go play in the old rink in Winnipeg,
Hmm.
and the ice was so good, and it was so hard that if you didn't have a real good edge on your skate, I would fall a little bit more.
Falling
So
a lot.
every time we went to Winnipeg, I'd have them just run over my blades, usually two or three, just little quick swipes,
Hmm.
and then they had the stone to cut the edge off. But I would have them just take the stone and run it down. So I mean, I definitely didn't like my skates overly sharp.
No, for sure, and it's crazy because I think now there's such a like a change in equipment and how much like guys use different equipment, and some of the things that come out is how many pairs of skates that guys will use in a year or sticks and stuff like that. I'm curious for your stick. You mentioned that, and you're pretty particular about it. Um, was there any certain curve that you like to use? Was it always black tape? Like, was there always like something specific about it?
Yeah, well, most of my curve, like I grew up in an area where the sticks were pretty well straight and curves were just coming in, and so I
Hmm.
mean, a lot of the old Russian sticks, they were straight, and then you had a big toe curve, and that's kind of what I liked.
Okay.
And the funny thing about it was, I always fixed my sticks, so I always had three or four ready every day, and when I was here, at the time I was using aluminum sticks because the wood sticks you're breaking three or four a day in practice, and you get a lot of times with defense you only get one good shot and the stick would break. So actually, it was Bobby Clark gave me Kristen aluminum shaft. I think maybe 4 or 5 games into the year, and I used, all I had was one shaft, and I used that whole shaft for the entire season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but every once in a while I'd get in a funk, and I wasn't scoring or just shooting the puck right. So I
Switch
used
it
to
up.
have our medical guy Sudsy. So Dave Settlemeyer, I'd say, Sudsy, fix my sticks. And actually, if I was a smart hockey player, I would have had him do them every night, because ironically, it just seemed like if I was in a bit of a slump, Sudsy did my six, I'd end up scoring that night. So it was actually, it was kind of funny.
That's awesome. So just kind of going off that, obviously you mentioned the trade coming to Philadelphia. Did you have like any thoughts when from coming in and just kind of going off that in your 10 years here? Are there any favorite moments that kind of stick out to you?
Well, I know uh, when I left Hartford, and I had a no trade contract. Like I said, they wanted to get rid of me, and that's the only time I'd been on a team
They wanted to
where
ship
we
you
had
out.
lost. We had lost, boy, I hated losing. So, and it was
Yeah.
time to go, and I had 4 teams on my list. It was the Islanders, the Rangers, the Bruins, and the Flyers. I thought they were the four best teams in the league,
Hmm.
and it worked out fortunate for me. I came to the Flyers. I mean, it was a great fit, because how the team was run, what it was all about team. It was never about individuals, and it
Right.
was about playing a team game. And that was my mentality. That's how I was brought up in the Howe household. It's never about you. It's about everybody else. Your thing was to do your part. So, but I think, yeah. So I was here from '82 to '92, and clearly, I think for a lot of guys that played anywhere near that time, that went to the Stanley Cup Finals in '87 when J.J. Daniels scored in Game 6 overtime, or near the end of the game in third period, and I thought the Spectrum roof was going to cave in, and I think for anybody that kind of played during that time frame of 4 or 5 years,
Hmm.
most everybody, that's their favorite moment.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, it's one of the goals that I think so many people remember, and from one of the runs as well. And um, just kind of going off that, you mentioned when you were picking, or at least for teams to potentially get traded to, you mentioned the Flyers and kind of how everything was all about the team. For you, does it seem like now that that might be something that the Flyers kind of have to get back, since they're going into a rebuild, and it's more of a transitional period right now for the team?
Well, I don't know. I think it's always been based about team. I think what's going on here in Philly is kind of like, I worked for the Red Wings for a lot of years. What's going on here is what happened with the Red Wings maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago. Is your older core players were getting old. Guys like Couturier's breaking down, and it's an Ellis, and he's only able to play 4 or 5 games. I mean, not like that's a huge hole.
Right. Yeah.
And in Detroit, so we had Zetterberg, we had a few guys that they got hurt, but we're hoping they get healthy, they come back next year. Then you find out at training camp they're not ready, so you're already behind 2 or 3 guys,
Right.
and you're trying to play catch up, and you just can't do it. The league's too hard. The parity is there used to be some maybe easy games. There are no easy games. I think in Detroit, we pulled the plug like 1 year too late. You end up making a trade or two, or not making a trade or two, and you, even if you get in the playoffs, you're not going to win.
Right.
And so getting in the playoffs is not the goal. I mean, winning is the goal. And and I think last year, right from the get go, it was just going to be almost impossible. And so, and if you look at the teams that have done extremely well over the last 20 to 30 years, teams, they've all been built through the draft.
Right.
And you look at the teams that they trade away Provorov, you get a bunch of assets. I mean, the teams, the Chicago won 3 cups in 6 years, I think it was, and
Yep.
they had 33 or 34 draft picks.
Yeah.
The Detroit Red Wings have worked on doing that, and the hard part with them is the Red Wings have just been killed in lottery. So, I mean, the worst you could do in a 4-year period was go back 12 spots. Well, they went back 10.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a huge negative for a team, and it prolongs the rebuild.
Right, for sure.
So the Flyers need to accumulate picks. I think they've started to do that,
Definitely,
and
yeah.
at the same time, you need your Bobby Clark kind of guy. You need your Dave Poulins. You need guys that are, we call them bus drivers. They are the guys that they're the leaders on the ice, off the ice, and they push the bar. And so the one thing I noticed over the last number of years here in Philly is a lot of guys that come in have really good year or two, and then their game just kind of flattens out. Well, it shouldn't flatten out, and my belief is the reason they flatten out is because there's nobody pushing that bar, and if
Right.
that player's not doing it himself, you look at the New York Islanders, go back years ago, who struggled and struggled, and then they drafted a John Tavares, who is not a great player, but he's a really darn good player. Well, he went in and he set the tone as a 18, 19-year-old kid, and he came in with a purpose, and he raised the bar of everybody in that locker room. And then the Islanders became a pretty good team, and a tough opponent again a couple years after that.
Mhm.
So that's kind of what the Flyers need, somebody like that. And with every team, you need a decent goalie, guy that can stop the puck, guy that's consistent. You need a couple of big studs on the back end. And you need a couple guys up the middle of the rink, and you need a guy that can score. And if you don't have at least those six pieces, you're just going to have a really hard time winning.
Right.
And so, that's what the Flyers need to do. And I know the fans don't want to hear, but sometimes it's a long process. But
Yeah.
if you can win a lottery or two, and the biggest thing, I know the fan base here. You just want your team to be competitive,
Right,
and
exactly.
and as long as you're competitive and you're playing together as a team,
Mhm.
I think they got the coach in place for that.
Right.
It's you got to be patient, but then if they can draft, the key is to drafting really well. If they can draft really well, and hopefully hit a home run here or there with say a second or third round or fourth round pick, then that speeds the process a bit. But I think that I'm definitely think they're going in the right direction,
Mhm.
and so I'm all I'm like everybody else. I'm rooting and hope they do well in the near future.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and I feel like, everything, it seems like it's been going in the right way, and you've had a couple pretty good picks, it seems like, in this recent year, and obviously getting Matvei Michkov, and he seems like he could kind of be that guy like you were talking about, like that bus driver, if you can get him here, and he can play, and that hopefully it all goes well. I just have one last question for you, and then I'll let you go.
Sure.
The Mr. and Mrs. Hockey Scholarship. Can you talk about that a little bit and just kind of what that means to you?
Yeah. It's basically the Howe Foundation, which was created by my mother and father back in the '90s, and it was my mom. Over the years, I look back, all the charitable thing. My dad was head of March of Dimes in Michigan for years, and they've done charity work their whole lives. And but then they created the Howe Foundation, and it's mostly, like I said, to help out, the youth, primarily here in North America. And uh, I think we've been 4 years now donating to Snyder Hockey,
Hmm.
and for me, it's great. I like we figure we're maximizing our dollars. So I mean, last year we were fortunate enough we were able to donate $50,000 when the Snyder Foundation matches 2-1. So it ends up being $150,000 that go to somebody, group of people or whatever in the Delaware Valley area, and it's not just for hockey; it's for education. So
Right.
that's part of what my mom was all about, and like I said, my mom made sure my dad got out there and he had the notoriety so he could attract the people that brought in the money. But and then especially after dad passed, and we have 4 kids in the family, and we all decided that, hey, what we're going to do with so much of what we raise and stuff at the Howe Foundation is it's not something we're going to take. We're going to continue the legacy of what our parents did, and by giving back. And there was always a story. It's called the first skate. And when my dad was a kid, and they had 9 kids in the family growing up on a farm during the Depression up in Saskatchewan, and somebody came by my grandmother's house, and they had no money, and so she gave her like $2 at the time, which was a ton of money.
Yeah.
And in return, they gave my grandmother a pair of skates. Was in one of the bags that they gave her,
Mhm.
and those were the first pair of skates that Gordie Howe ever used. Actually, he had one. His sister had one. Dad finally took it from Sister Helen.
Oh, wow.
But it was, so we're kind of hoping that, there's so many different charities, but and I've met some of the people that have gone through Snyder Hockey and different things, and and they see them all the way through college if they want to go. And I just think it's a fantastic thing, and I had a lot of respect for Ed Snyder, so that has a lot to do with it too. But and also we're trying to do some things in other areas. We're trying to put something together up in Dad's hometown of Saskatoon, and we're really close to doing that. So,
That's awesome.
but it's all about continuing the legacy of what my parents did for years, and
Mhm.
and by giving back. So I think the world's a better place if everybody can give back a little bit.
For sure. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
All right.
And yeah, no, I mean that's all I have for you. Thank you again, seriously, Mr. Howe. This was awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time, and it was good that we were able to kind of get it planned, and it was awesome. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, Christopher. All right. Thanks.
All right,
Have a
I'll
good
talk
night.
to you too.
All right.
Have a good
Yeah.
one.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.